Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for some legacy action yet again. Today we are playing a deck that I've never played before that I think is quite a cool and fun one, and that deck is Aluren. Now, the basic principle of this deck is you cast this spell called Aluren. It's an enchantment. It says any player may cast creature spells with mana value 3 or less without paying their mana costs and as though they had flash. Now, if you have this in play, you can play Asarak the Archlich, and due to Asarak the Archlich bouncing, if you haven't completed a dungeon, he will just immediately bounce. Now, you have to complete the special dungeon, which is the Tomb of Annihilation. So if you complete the other dungeon, one that has the deal one, I think it's drain life for 1, then you can just keep playing this infinitely until you drain your opponent out and win the game. So that's the combo. Now we have the 4 Alurens in the main deck, and we have 3 Living Wish to go and find more of the Archlich out of the boards. So effectively we've got 5 copies of one half of our combo and 4 copies of the other. But we have all these Brainstorms and these Ponders, so we've got the power of blue spells. But what happens when you're not trying to combo, or when you don't have the combo? Well, for that, you've got your classic blue suite of Force of Wills and your Source of Plowshares to deal with threats. And then you've got Baleful Strix, which can gum up the works, and is also free in another draw if you do have an Aluren out. And then we have Uro, who is just sort of the best of control finishes you can have, really. It draws you cards, keeps you alive, sort of does it all. And because this isn't a graveyard deck, it means that this is attacking on a completely different axis to the rest of what the deck's trying to achieve. Now, there are different versions of Aluren that run a different selection of creatures, like Cavern Harpy and stuff. So you bounce a load of creatures and you assemble a loop of bouncing several creatures and draining life every time you do the loop. I prefer this one, it's just cleaner, it takes up less slots, and it means that you can have more space for all these other things. Now, there are a few interesting developments that I saw online that some people are trying out, and that is the domain spell. So we have Leyline Binding, which has been very, very good when I've seen it in other people's decks at the moment. So it's basically just a flash Oblivion Ring, but it can cost very little if you have enough basic land types. So we've got a Triome here, we've got the Savannah, we've got the Scrubland, we've got Tropical Island. So we should be casting this for about 2 mana most of the time to exile basically anything we want, which seems pretty good. And then we've got this card called Shadow Prophecy, which I'm not so sold on, but there was a 5-0 list running 4 of these. So I've trimmed 1 for an additional Living Wish. But I think the Shadow Prophecy is alright. Basically, it's going to be looking at 4-ish cards, and then I put 2 of them into my hand. Now, if any of you remember Dig Through Time, that was look at 7 cards and put 2 in. So this is going to be not as good as Dig Through Time, obviously, but you'll be able to get a not too dissimilar effect in the mid to late game with it. So you'll be able to look at 5 and keep 2 at instant speed for only 3 mana. So this seems like a reasonable shout to me. And, you know, it's a bit spicy and we got to play some content on the channel, so why not? We also have an Endurance main deck because Endurance is just a good creature, it's worth having. Now the sideboard, because we're a Wish deck, we have an important sideboard. So we have one of our combo pieces here, and then we have a few singletons we can tutor for. So we have Plague Engineer for like decks with like elves and so on and so forth. And we have Collector Roof, which I think is a great one to stifle a load of decks that are trying to get you with artifacts, obviously. Night of Autumn, which is a bit flexible and can use to blow something up that's already on the board. And Leovold, which can curve from Living Wish on 2 to Leovold on 3. So it's just a really good curve filler. So I quite like this slot here. We also have Caracas because you can find lands with Living Wish. I'm not sure if there should be any other tutor targets for lands, but this is all they've got in here at the moment. I don't think anything like a Wasteland is necessarily relevant, but there could be games where that's important. But this combo goes around Glacial Chasm, so I'm not sure if it's really necessary. We have 3 Endurance in the board. The original list I looked at had these split between Surgicals and Endurance, but I think having 1 in your sideboard and then boarding more in, so you've just got more of the effect, is better in games where you need Endurance. And the fact is, Endurance is just one of the best cards in Legacy at the moment. It gives you turn 0 interaction, it gives you a way of beating down, and it's a very effective clock against things like Delver. So I think having these to bring in will shore up the Delver matchup slightly as well, because we've got tools here, but Delver can definitely get away from us. So I think making sure that we're extra good against that is better than running the Surgicals, in my opinion. We've got a couple of Force of Negation for when you really need to counter stuff. Carpet of Flowers, which is a very powerful effect that can allow us to accelerate against control matchups and get ahead of them so we can play further ahead of the curve and just push an advantage to try and win the game. And then we also have Force of Vigor, which is just a standout card for blowing up important things that need to be blown up. So that's pretty much the deck list. Now, like I said, I've not played Aluren before, but I'm excited to see how this goes. So let's jump into a league and see how we get on. But before we do that, if you could just scroll down a little bit and hit the old subscribe button, that would really help me out because I need to get my subscribers up so I can try and get monetized. I'm trying to do 5 legacy leagues a week, so any support I can get is really helpful. All right, thank you very much for that. Let's play some Magic. All right, so we're into the first game, and this is our opening hand. As you can see, I would be relying on a land to do anything with it, so I think we have to ship this one. If I had a Ponder here, that might change things, but I think we have to ship this. Speaking of Ponder, so this is a 1-lander, but we have a Ponder and we have a Birds of Paradise, so we can cover a lot of sins that way. We also have access to our combo piece and some defense here, so I think we will keep this, and we probably bottom the Endurance. Now, obviously, if our opponent plays Reanimator, that'll be an annoying one to bottom, but I think you just have to play it straight up here of what's going to be the best for expanding out, and this undoes the mulligan quite nicely. Our opponent is a 60 card deck, so it's not Yorion. So our 2 options here, we can either play the Birds of Paradise out or the Ponder. We're going to play the Ponder because we want to make sure we actually hit land drops. Although we don't have any basics in this deck, so I think maybe we just get the Trop and play out the Birds of Paradise. This is quite a big decision for an early point in the game, but I think we give this a go. So what this hopefully lets us do next turn is Ponder and maybe draw a card off the Baleful Strix. Okay, so this is looking like either a Prison deck or a Painter deck, which means it's a good idea to have played out the Birds of Paradise in my deck that doesn't really have a lot of the old basic lands in. Okay, let's cast this. So we have a land that comes into play tap, which isn't ideal. I'm not really interested in the other things in this deck. Because we have another Ponder, I think we're going to shuffle this one. And then we'll cast a Ponder with this one. Okay, so what is going to be good here? Ponder, then the Baleful Strix, then the Mystic Sanctuary. So we draw the Mystic Sanctuary now and play it tapped, I think. So what this allows us to do next turn is play the Baleful Strix and the Ponder. Alternatively, we can try and play the Uro, depending on what our opponent is doing. But ideally, you want to have a land so you get the maximum effect out of this. So far, Shadow Prophecy isn't looking great because it's only giving us 2 for our domain at the moment. So this is just going to be a poor divination right now. So our opponent's played out Fury. Okay. Sure. And a Layla. So now we can't cast the Baleful Strix, so we are very behind in this game now. I did have a little bit of reservation with the land because it's a 20 land deck, I think, with 3 Birds of Paradise. So it's kind of being a little bit cheeky. So maybe this should have... This definitely had to be a green-blue source, I think, turn 1. So I don't think I can beat myself up about that. Arguably, I should have kept the Triome instead of trying to hit a better land. And that would give me access to more colours. We haven't shown any of our combo side yet, so they are not expecting that. If we're looking at a game 3 here, which seems likely considering how far ahead they are on board. So we get here for 4, 5, 6, 7... 8, 9, 10, 11. So it's very close to lethal. Okay, so it's Ponder. So we have to get the Misty Rainforest, so it doesn't really matter what the other ones are because we need to do this. Crack this. So if we get an Underground Sea, or we can get Bayou. I think the Underground Sea is just the best get here. So we can block the Layla and just survive, I think, a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we can survive this turn. Nope. We are dead. We will concede the game because they're going to blow out my blocker. Okay, so I did not really have a lot of the old mana sources there, which was a bit of an issue. Now, the Plague Engineer is going to be good against goblins, but again, if I board in the Plague Engineer, I'm going to be a bit further behind in terms of Living Wish. I think Living Wishing for it is just going to be better most of the time here. Now they're going to be a Blood Moon deck, I reckon, which means some of our stuff is going to be awkward here. So we are very weak to Blood Moon. That's what happens when you play the greedy Leyline Binding style deck. So we have to have this Force of Wills. I think we probably have to board in the Force of Negations because of that, because we're so weak to it. Endurance is just a good creature that can block very effectively against a lot of their creatures and hold the ground until we can combo. We could always trim some of our cantrips. The problem with that is we need the blue card, so I think we probably do have to board out these. And I think we just board out another Shadow Prophecy for a... So the Force of Vigor is going to be good against Blood Moon and allow us to get out from underneath a Blood Moon. I think for that reason it's also going to be better than a Leyline Binding. So I think we're looking at this, although part of me wants to try and fit in another Endurance or two just to have a nice meaty threat. So do we want to try and trim some of our blue cantrip? I don't think we can because we need to keep our Force of Will count high. Is the Leyline Binding too greedy? Certainly could be argued that it is too greedy in this matchup, but I need removal, so I don't think I can board out anymore. We're going to try it like this. We need the counter spell for the Blood Moon, or Chalice potentially, or Trinisphere, or something that's going to get sort of half of our deck not functioning. So we're going to give this a go. Our combo should be very good against them, as long as we can actually resolve a 2 green-green spell against them without getting Blood Moon. So we're going to submit like this. So this is our opening hand. It has very similar problems to the last one, but it does let us get a Bird of Paradise out in front, and it does give us Force of Will blue card. So even after the last time, I think we're going to do this and start on the Birds of Paradise. We have some removal as well, so I think we're looking at... This is a tricky choice. I think it has to be the Tropical Island again, purely so we can cast a Brainstorm and dig for more lands. So play this. We sacrifice this and go and get a Tropical Island. And we play a Birds of Paradise. And I think we have to say go then. And hopefully our Force of Will can do the business if it's required, if they try and accelerate out a Blood Moon or something, because I don't think we can beat Blood Moon with this deck very easily. A Chrome Mox, sure. So they're going to 2-for-1 themselves to try and ramp out whatever they're doing now. A second Chrome Mox. Okay, so the Force of Will is looking stronger and stronger because they're pitching all their resources into making one thing. Now it depends what they make here. So they play a Blood Moon. I have one card. They'll have one card left in hand. So I think we cast this, pitching the Brainstorm. Seems very unlikely to me that that would be a bait spell. So I think we will cast... I think we cast the Brainstorm here purely because we can use the Ponder to shuffle them away so we don't get Brainstorm locked. Like this, for example. This is not the situation for Uro, I don't think. And I don't think we need another Plough yet. And then we will Ponder, any order, shuffle. Okay, so we did not hit a second land. I'm starting to think the mana base on this deck is not great. I took the mana base from a 5-0 list. All I did was change some of the greedier cards. The Chalice of the Void on 1 is going to be very good against me here. It's not going to stop me from winning the game though, because my win condition is a 4-mana spell and a 3-mana spell. Okay, so we drew a Misty Rainforest. That's good for us. So what do we want from this? What is the correct get here? Let me just have a little think. So we want a black source, so it has to be Sea or Bayou. We're looking to cast a green-green spell, so I think the Bayou is the better get here. Obviously that land couldn't get the scrub land. So let's go black, blue. Okay, so that's what we're going to see. We want to see more lands. So at the moment, these are not looking great, but we have the ability to pitch the Brainstorm to a Force of Will or Force of Negation later. Okay, so the Blood Moon. So we are in a little spot of bother, I would say, here. They've correctly identified that Blood Moon is very good against me. So we play out this mountain. And that's 16 turns to go. So we're going to have to draw into a Force of Vigor type effect. Or a Living Wish. But Living Wish doesn't get us anything we can actually blow it up with. So I think we're banking on them not drawing a threat. Anjo's Ravager is a pretty good one. It's going to draw them a load of cards. So I think it's worth blocking with my Baleful Strix. We've drawn another Baleful Strix, but we cannot cast this one because we only have access to red and mana of one other colour. So this is going to be a real uphill slog because the mana base on this deck is very greedy. Chance of Void on 0, that doesn't impact me. So I think I have to block here so they don't get... So I just got to hope the 3 cards they've drawn aren't good so I can at least get this guy off the board. Fable the Mirror Breaker is a very good draw for them. So we're looking for Force of Vigor would be good here. So we can play this Triumph out, or we can cycle it, because while it's in my hand, it is still something I can cycle. So I think we cycle this one. An Uro. That's not the one. So my deck cannot utilize red mana for anything right now. My Leyline Binding is going to cost 5, so I'm still a little ways away from that. But we've got food to pitch to Force of Vigor when we find it. And we can also unlock ourselves from underneath the chalice and play all these spells. We are very far behind here, but we can backdoor into a win because we're in a combo deck. Living Wish. So we can Living Wish this turn. What does that find us though? We ideally needed something that we can cast with just one colour of mana. I don't think the Night of Autumn is going to do anything here. We don't have any more Birds of Paradise we can grab. So all this will grab is the combo piece. I think it's probably worth grabbing that now just to be mana efficient, since I can't interact with my hand too much. Alright, so what are the options here? So Collector Roof is something we can get to turn off a lot of their things, which I don't hate, to be honest. I think that might actually be the play here. Like, we could get the Lich in the hopes that we draw... If we get the Lich and we draw Force of Vigor next turn, we win the game. So I think that's better, at least giving us a chance to win the game. Having a chance to win the game is better than getting a thing that makes me lose marginally slower, I think. Again, I'm not favoured at all here, but I do have 2 cards that I can draw that win me the game, which is a nice position to be in when you're this far behind. Obviously that window is closing quickly with these Favour of the Mirror Breakers threatening to flip. Okay, so now I'm off of green mana entirely. So we are still on the draw Force of Vigor to win the game plan. Considering the mana base for this, I don't think the Night of Autumn is a very good selection for the sideboard here. Okay, so I have to cast this in their turn. So we have to go to cleanup. So what do we discard here? I think we discard the Baleful Strix. So now what we can do is we can Force of Vigor when the time is right. So is it worth Force of Vigoring this? No, we have to Force of Vigor these two. So we wait for the activation of the Reflection of Kiki Jiki on Bone Crusher Giant. And then we get to... So we want to target this and this. And we pitch the Uro. So this unlocks all of our mana. So then we cast a Brainstorm. We're looking for a land. A Pyroblast. That's pretty good. Sure, the Pyroblast resolves. Sacrifice this. So we have to get a white source. So I think we get... Does it matter what we get here? We have green, green, Tundra, Tundra. So this is going to hit me for 2, but it's going to stop. It's going to fizzle their ability, so I'm only going to take 4 this turn. So if we draw an untapped mana source, we should be able to win on next turn, as long as they don't have another Blood Moon or something to put in with the 3 mana they're going to have here. So we need the 2 cards in their hand to not be Blood Moon. So they have the Blood Moon. So we're back onto a Force of Vigor out again. Nope, we're just dead. Sure. So it's only the first match of the league, but I've already discovered a fundamental, what I would describe as a fundamental flaw in this particular list. I think you want to have, if you're this cold to Blood Moon, I think you need 4 Force of Vigors rather than trying to have these little wish targets in your sideboard. So on to the next round. So this is our opening hand, and we're on the draw. I'm not really a fan of what's going on here. So we don't really have any interaction. We can't even cast our Baleful Strix, which again, I think the mana base here is greedy. So we're going to mulligan this one. This hand is a little better because at least it lets us cast the Baleful Strix into Uro. We're pretty cold, but we can, to some things, we can play Brainstorm on turn 1 if necessary. So I think we will keep this. So I have to put one of these cards on the bottom. I think we put the Lich on the bottom and worry about that later. Try and play an Uro game as best we can. Okay, Watery Grave suggests Death Shadow. So Source Plowshare is very good against Death Shadow's decks if you can resolve them. So they are a Wasteland deck, which is going to be good against us. So I think we play out this so they can't Wasteland us. The Baleful Strix is going to be good. It can't be snuffed out. A Thoughtseize. We have the option of trying to hide with a Brainstorm. I don't think that's worth using my Brainstorm on at this stage of the game. We have effectively 2 answers to threats. We have a Brainstorm, which is obviously something that can pull us into more answers. So they'll either have the option of taking... Okay, so took in the best best answer. Okay, they've just got a second one. So they're probably going to take the swords if they took the Baleful Strix last time. That would be my assumption. Okay, they've gone for the brainstorms, so they don't want me to be able to fix my hand. Interesting. So now we have to play into Wasteland. So we should play the land that we want, that we care about getting wastelanded the least. So we play out the Savannah, because this doesn't help us cast Baleful Strix if we draw another one. So if they wasteland this, it's not the end of the world. If they don't have a threat in play and they wasteland us, it's just not really achieving much for either of us, which is fine by me. So judging by my opponent's play pattern so far, I'm expecting them to have a Murktide Regent in hand, so they're building cards in the graveyard. Either that or they don't have enough things to damage themselves to get their creature online, their Death Shadow. So now we do have to play out a land because we want to use our Brainstorm. Alternatively, we can play out the Underground Sea and fetch and then put in a Tropical Island to Brainstorm with, or we can put in the Underground Sea. So I think it's worth playing the Uro here. So what lands do we actually want here? I think we want a white source. Okay, so they've just got a Stifle. That's not great for us, but it's something we have to live with, I'm afraid. So this is definitely a Death Shadow deck. The other option, it could be a Doomsday deck that really wanted the 5th blue-black source. Or it could be a Tainted Pact deck, but they had 2 Thoughtseizes, so that suggests not Tainted Pact deck. Okay, so they got Brainstorm. So we have the option of trying to Brainstorm end of turn in, but because we have a play, I think we're okay just to make the play and save our Brainstorm for when we have a fetch land. So this is interesting. So we can play the Baleful Strix out using this Underground Sea, which I think is likely to get a response. But I think digging into our deck with an Uro is also fine. I think we will cast this. Green, blue, blue. Let's play the Uro out. Okay, so they got a Daze on the front half of the Uro. Again, they're not really developing their positions. They're trading 1 for 1 with a card that I get back all the time. Like, what they should have is a creature in play. If they're doing all these things whilst they have any threat in play, whether it be a Delver or anything like that, then all of a sudden this exchange of plays is really good for them. But as it is, they're not really accelerating themselves. All they do is keeping us at parity. So if I play the Daze that turn, if I play the Baleful Strix that turn, I play around Daze. But I decided to play the Uro because I don't mind if it gets dazed. No wastelands from them still is good. No threats from them is good. I'm very surprised they don't have many threats here. So we need black and blue. So we can't cast the Brainstorm first unless we're definitely shuffling away, but they could be displaying a Stifle again. So I think we're best off just playing out the Baleful Strix and holding up a Source to Plowshares. Next turn we can Brainstorm with a Polluted Delta in play. In an emergency we can crack the fetch and get a Brainstorm, but we don't really want to do that unless they completely tap out first, due to the fact that we know they're running Stifles and they haven't had any threats, so they've got to have something in their deck, in their hand, that's making them not play out threats. Obviously a lack of threats does that, but they have to have something in their hand. And they haven't been playing any Ponders either. They played a couple of Brainstorms. So a Gurmag Angler, that's a pretty medium level threat, I think. So we can Source to Plowshares this, but if we do it now, then we might have to crack the Polluted Delta and then get into a little Stifle war. If we do it on my turn, we might face a Force of Negation. So what we could do is we can do it on their upkeep. So let's see what we have here. So this turn, I think we are okay to... So we have another one of these in hand. We'll use this to Brainstorm. Let's see if this gets a reaction from our opponent. Okay, so these cards are interesting to me. I don't really think we want the Birds of Paradise. The Leyline Binding is a nice answer, and the Source to Plowshares is just... They have to win with creatures, so I think having the most amount of removal is fine. It's a case of whether or not I want the Ponder in my hand or the Tropical Island. I can put the Ponder on top and then still draw if I need to, or I can put the Tropical Island back and then... I don't really want to crack this land this turn is the thing. So I think we put the Tropical Island on top, and that way if we crack the Polluted Delta and they Stifle it, we don't mind because we've got another land coming. So I think that's a play we can make here. So we crack this and see what our opponent does. I'm assuming another Stifle here. Yes, sure. So we don't really mind that Stifle happening. So now we can add blue and Ponder. So we're probably going to want to shuffle away both of those cards. So that's why we did it that way. So we have a shuffle effect still. We don't want any of these. So we're going to go any order. A Leyline Binding, sure. This costs 1 less for each basic land type. So we've got Forest, Plains, Island, Swamp. So this costs 2 mana right now. We're going to hold back with the Baleful Strix. And we're going to pass the turn. So we're looking for a source that can cast the Uro from the graveyard soon. That's what we're building up to. But we have 4 removal spells in hand versus a deck that needs to win through creatures. So I don't mind that at all. Should they shuffle their library off the pond deck? Will they attack their 5/5 into us? They will not. So we can play this Source to Plowshares out now on this creature, but then we are susceptible to the 1 mana counter spell that they run because their creatures are big, as well as a Daze. So I don't think it's worth doing that. Okay, so we have the Polluted Delta here. So we're not priced into playing the Uro this turn. What we can do is we can go about exiling this creature, which also makes the... So there's the spell that I was talking about, the Stubborn Denial. So now that gives me an opportunity to crack this without them having Stifle. So we've got green, green, blue, blue. So ideally another blue-green source would help us out here. But because we probably want the ability to cast a Source to Plowshares this turn, so we're going to play this Tundra. And then, is it worth casting the Leyline Binding this turn? I think it probably is. Their deck shouldn't be able to interact with it very easily. So this is an interesting one. If I hit them, it makes their Death Shadow bigger, which isn't really something I want to do. We want to win this game with Uro, so we're just going to keep this back for now. I don't think the 1 damage is going to make the most amount of difference necessarily. So we can attack next turn and put them to 7, and then we'll have a 6/6 and a 1/1, so the clock will be 2 turns that way. See, there we go. So there's this creature. They've got 3 cards in hand, so we could Uro this turn, but that'll be playing into a Daze, or we can Brainstorm with the ability to Source to Plowshares, which I think is a better play. Which land do we cast? We need to keep our white mana up. I think we want to keep this up in case we draw another Baleful Strix. Do we even need to cast a Brainstorm? Our hand is pretty good. So if we cast the Uro this turn, I think we're best off just passing and seeing what our opponent does. And then we try and remove their threat end of turn. And then if we draw a land, we can Uro through a Daze. There's no need to play this game quickly. Obviously, my ability to play and win in time is important. But that's to do with my operations rather than this game is actually going. Right, so we have the Shadow Prophecy as well now, which is an interesting one. I think we are okay just passing the turn again. So our opponent needs multiple things to deal with what's in our hand right now. Thoughtseize. Sure, I think we'll respond with Source to Plowshares on their creature. So now we have the option of whether or not we want to hide things with Brainstorm, which I think is probably okay here. Let's see if this gets any movement on their side. Okay, so we can just put back 2 of our cards here that we want. Okay, so they're just conceding. So we were going to probably put back the Leyline Binding on top, just so we had the removal in case they played a follow-up threat. Sure, we can sideboarding. So this is a creature matchup. We just want to kill their creatures. The Carpet of Flowers is good here because they're a Wasteland deck and they're a Wasteland Stifle deck, but this will give us mana. So I like this as an option. The Endurance is good against their Murktides and their Gurmag Anglers. I don't think Force of Negation is where we want to be here. I don't even know if we want to be a Force of Will deck in this matchup, to be honest. I think we might just be better off playing these cards and accelerating out with just a bunch of removal and just drawing our good things. Like, if we have a Force of Will, I don't think that's really going to achieve a great deal. The only thing this can do is protect us when we're trying to combo, but we're not really trying to combo here. We're just trying to grind the game out with an Uro with potential options going forward. I think leaving our singletons in the sideboard is fine here. I don't think we want the main deck. So we need to trim 1 more card here. I think we're more or less playing a fairer game here. So I think we can probably... I think we might be able to trim a Living Wish here. I think we're just going to... Yeah, I think we're going to trim a Living Wish and try and accelerate out like our sort of mid-rangey threats here. And also this exile so it doesn't provide food for the Uro in the graveyard, which is a slight thing that can come up. And we have Shadow Prophecies. We just want to use these to draw into more removal spells. I don't think we have to worry about using Force of Wills here, but our opponent won't know we brought them out, so we get the value of them playing around them still. Our opening hand has no mana. We have to mulligan. This opening hand seems good. It's got a removal spell. It's got Uros. Then we keep, and we can bottom one of our redundant Uros. So our opponent's probably going to pick up our Ponder here. That would be my assumption. Or the Baleful Strix. It's one of those two. It depends on what they've got in their hand. There is potentially an argument for a Swords to Plowshares, but I suspect the Baleful Strix is a bigger problem because they rely on things like Snuff Out for removal. Yeah, the Baleful Strix went, sure. So now we have the option of pondering, but if we ponder here, we expose ourselves to Wasteland. We're not really looking for anything apart from mana sources, so I think we just play out this. Obviously, if we're playing this out, it opens us up to Stifle. So it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, as they say. This is a difficult choice, actually, of what land to play out. We need to make a decision, though. So I think if we play out the... Ponder this turn for this. Okay, so we have an Aluren which we don't want. So we can put that back. For the Shadow Prophecy is okay if we have the 3 lands. Put that on top, and then we put this Flooded Strand on top. We don't shuffle our library here, so we just keep the lands flowing. So we don't really have any spells that require us to sacrifice our fetch lands yet, because we can cast our Source of Power Shards off of this. Okay, so there's the Wasteland that we were expecting. Now this isn't bad if they don't have a threat to follow up with. So now we don't want the Shadow Prophecy. Unfortunately, we are going to draw it there. Okay, so we play out... this one definitely gets Source of Plowshare, so we play this out, and then we pass a turn. We don't want to crack our fetch or anything now because of the Stifle. So it does mean that we have this Aluren in hand that we don't really want to use yet. So if our opponent's just going to sit and stare at us, it's just going to mean we're going to accrue more resources to deal with their threats over time, whilst they're holding up their Stifle. Okay, so there's another Wasteland. So they have Wasteland and Stifle potentially at the ready. So basically what we want to do here is as little as possible. They don't have the ability to make a scary Murktide, so there's no urgency for me to try and endurance them out. So we're just going to pass a turn and keep waiting until we draw land. What they can do is they can Wasteland my fetch land to force action with a Stifle, but that's a 2-for-1 on themselves, which is fine if they're not making threats. I actually think the Death Shadow deck is very good at the moment, but I think you really have to mulligan into a game plan of how to win the game. You can't just sit back like this. They really need to have threats that they can deploy in a reasonable fashion, because all of this disruption, if they just had a Delver on turn 1 or whatever, and then were doing all these disruption to me, then they'd be so far ahead and the game would be over. And that I'd be forced to use these into their Stifle and so on and so forth. But they just haven't had that action. So we'd like to draw a land this turn. We did draw a land. So again, we can just sit and wait because we're not being made to do anything here. Now if we don't draw lands, so we go to discard, then it becomes whether or not we want to crack our fetches to do anything. So you have 2 Wastelands here, so when I do cast a spell, I'm not going to get a lot of option to cast anything else, which is something I need to keep in mind. 1, 2, 3, 4. So they can start casting things like Gurmag Angler soon. Another land. Excellent. So we can cast out our Aluren and just play some guys, but I don't think our Aluren would resolve. And then we'd be at the mercy of all these lands. Sure, so 13 now, so they're close to having a Death Shadow that can do things. I don't think we need to do anything here. Let's see, another land. Excellent. So, again, we are not pressured into doing anything here. We can just be the reactive deck. Strange game. Just the aggro deck just looking at the sort of more controlling deck. Okay, so now they can cast Death Shadow. So I think we make movement with our lands at their end step here. So we want to get the land that we care about least getting. Okay, so we've got 1 Stifle. How many Stifles can they have? Let's find out. Okay, so we want to get the land that we care least about getting Wasteland, which I think is probably a scrub land here. So then we will... So they have a lot of options what they could do. They can daze. Okay, they're just going to Wasteland that land. Sure, that's why we got that one. We're just going to have to work through these Wastelands, unfortunately. So it doesn't feel like they've got any more effects, like any more Stifle effects. If they let that one go, and you just kind of have to Stifle each one. So the question is, if I unload all these and just put a Endurance into play, is that a worthwhile play? Or can I Shadow Prophecy and try and gain something? But because they haven't been playing anything, I'm suspecting they have a day. So I think we just have to untap and go to draw and just carry on playing this game. So if we play this Savannah out, it's just going to get Wastelanded. Is that something we're okay with happening? We're going to have to grind through the Wastelands eventually. We may as well... Is it worth doing it now? I think it's probably fine to do it now. Like I said, they're going to have to get through the Wastelands eventually. And if they Wasteland this, then I might crack these and play the Endurance. So this one gets us a Tropical Island. This one gets us a... So they do have the Stifle. Interesting. Have they got another Stifle? Okay, so this one gets us the Underground Sea, so we can still cast Baleful Strix off of these 2. So we let the Stifle resolve, and then we cast So we shuffle in their graveyard so they can't cast any Gurmag Anglers or Murktide Regents. So we have the threat on board. I suspect they can remove this relatively easily with something like a Snuff Out. But we've stopped. So they were looking ages for a threat. So, oh, Doughty Voidwalker is an interesting one. So we can't actually source to Plowshares this. But they have 2 Doughty Voidwalkers. Interesting. So these will certainly ramp up the damage quite quickly. A Bird of Paradise, I think, is something I'm definitely in the market for here. I suspect they'll try and kill us if they can. These can't attack, or these can't block or be blocked because they have Shadow. So I need to just come in for 3 this turn. It will turn on their Death Shadows is the only problem. But I might end up in a weird race against these, using my Uro to pad my life total. Which I think is probably what we're going to go for next turn. Either that or Shadow Prophecy. The problem with Uro is that they can sacrificing so that the Uro is not going to be able to come back. So this would literally just be a gain 3, draw a card. Okay, the Fatal Push is pretty good here. It's also mana production. Carpet of Flowers is very good here. Okay, so this is an excellent draw for me. So if I go to my attacks, attack with this, then this main phase, yes, I would like this. Use the ability. We get white, so we get a lot of white here. So we have 3 here, so this costs 3 to cast. So we'll get rid of this guy. And we'll source the Plowshares this guy. And then next turn, so this is exactly the situation I brought these in for, because my opponent's going to have all islands and I'm going to be able to accelerate out. Sure, so we managed to win that off the back of them keeping a weird hand. They wanted to disrupt me, but I didn't play into it because I didn't have to. So, all right, let's go into the 3rd round, I think it is. We're 1-1 now. So we're into the 3rd round, and this is our opening hand. We have a Brainstorm to fix our hand if we need to, and we have Baleful Strix to give us a bit more card advantage, and we have Endurance in case we need some sort of emergency shuffling in the graveyard if I can find a green card, as well as just having a nice threat. So I'm going to keep this. I'll begin with a Misty Rainforest and then pass a turn. Basic Forest into Green Sun Zenith, which is giving me the vibe of Elves, but it could be something like Maverick. So now we have the Force of Will. I'm quite tempted just to play out the Baleful Strix and get a little deeper in my deck. So this can go and find us a Tropical Island. And we can tap this for blue and this for black. Play this out and we have Force of Will for the next turn. Okay, so you have the Aluren, so we just need to find another land and either the Lich or the Living Wish. Now our opponent could be on Elves here, which means they're going to be... Okay, so this is an Elf turn. So countering Glimpse of Nature is almost always right, so I'm going to do this. If I don't counter the Glimpse here, I'm going to feel very silly. Like, as bait spells go, if it is a bait spell, it's a very powerful one. Why would Symbiote? So they might have been holding a Cradle, so they could play this and then Cradle and then keep going. So this turn I think we're more likely to be on our Brainstorm plan. So I think it's better to have black. I can go and get whichever mana I don't need here. So I think we just use this one. We're going to Brainstorm. See if we can find Living Wish or the Lich. They don't run main deck hand disruption in Elves as a general rule, especially not Glimpse version. So I should be able to find... If I find a Living Wish, I can cast it this turn. We did not find a Living Wish. We did find a Leyline Binding, which is something we're in the market for. The Uro here is not something I can cast this turn. The Leyline Binding, so we've got 1, 2, 3. So this costs 3 at the moment. If I go and fetch, I need to fetch a white source, so I can get a white. So it'll cost 2, so I can cast the Leyline Bindings. I think we'll put the Endurance on top. This isn't really an Endurance matchup for the most part. And it's a case of, do you want the Birds of Paradise or the Uro? Because we've got 4 lands, I think we're just going to put the birds back, and we use the Uro to draw us a card later on. So we play this out so we have access to white mana. So the Wirewood Symbiote is going to be the target because it has to be. What I'd like to do is flash us in response to a creature, because they're going to plan their turn around possibly being able to bounce a creature. So if I can disrupt that, then I think that's going to be more profitable because they're not going to have the maximum information to make their decisions with. Right, let's pass the turn and go. Is this going to be another Dryad Arbor? Yes, okay, so they have a Gaia's Cradle in hand. That's what this signals to me. A Glimpse of Nature. Sure. So what I want to do here is remove this Wild Symbiote now, so they have less mana when they play their Cradle. So if I get a white source, is the Tundra the best source here? I need another green source. It probably has to be Savannah, just so I can cast my Aluren. I think that's right. So that means they're going to get 2 mana out of their Cradle, so they might only be able to draw 2 cards this turn. Well, we'll see what they draw. Okay, so they've got Virtual Rangers. They're probably going to have a very good turn here. But we've disrupted them a little bit. It means they can't rebuy this and keep playing it. And do they have the Cradle? They did not have a Cradle. That's good news for us. So we want to draw Asarak, the Lich dude. Then we win the game. Winning the game is something I'm in the market for. Okay, so we have Source of Plowshares. And we have this Uro. Now, if we play the Uro out first, this can find us a Tundra. But it also gives us more information. We yield to these. Put this to play off of the Uro. And then I think we have to hit the thing that gives them the most amount of mana on their turn. So I think that means Source to Plowshares and the Heritage Druid now. And then we pass the turn. So they can still just Cradle me here. But the fact they didn't cast Cradle last turn was interesting to me. They didn't play the Cradle last turn. It probably means they're just on like a natural order line, so they can just play it out here. I'm in a little bit of a bind, because there's only so far you can keep this down without things like Plague Engineer. I can draw a Living Wish and deploy a Plague Engineer, but I need an additional mana to do that. Okay, so this is going to be an Elvish Visionary. So they're just trying to draw cards, so they don't have the Cradle yet, I guess, unless they're trying to do the maths about how much... Actually, no, a Cradle here would be good for them, because that would just give them enough in natural order. But they've gone to combat, so we're okay. Is this a turn? I get to draw the Arc Glitch and do my combo? No. So this is a mountain, so if I play this, it means I get to see more cards with this. So I'm in the mood to play this. So if we tap for 3, what are the cards we want to cast with 1 mana? Source to Plowshares and Ponder. So we cast this for black. Green, green. We're going to cast this now. So we get 2 of these cards. So I said we're in the market for a Brainstorm as one of our options. We also have the Baleful Strix. So I think the Brainstorm is good. I don't think the Baleful Strix necessarily good enough here. It does draw us another card, so does Euro, but the Baleful Strix only costs 2 mana, so I think we just take that one. And then we've already played our land for the turn, so we can Brainstorm now to try and find a Force of Will, or we can do that in response on their turn, which I think is better. So I Brainstorm now, it gives the impression of desperation because I don't have a fetch land, and I've already played my land for the turn, so it'd be a bit like, oh, why are you doing that? Whereas if I pass, having looked at the top 5 cards in my library and picked them, they're probably going to think, oh, okay, so they can counter my natural order. Boseiju on the Leyline Binding. I can't really respond to that, so that's fine. So this is mainly going to be used to... So I can use this to put the... like a Mystic Sanctuary here and put a Source to Plowshares on top of my library, which I think is a good play. Or I can use it to dig. Do I want the Source to Plowshares or do I want the Force of Will? The way I lose this game is to natural order right now, I think. So I think the Force of Will is the better pick here. And we have a blue card already, so we can guarantee a Force of Will, so we can't lose to natural order this turn. Well, we can lose to 2 natural orders. And they can play the guy that makes spells uncounterable. The green guy. That would be annoying. But I guess you just have to play... Because their board isn't that impressive right now, they're a long way off of playing a guy and activating it to make all their guys 5/5s, which isn't enough when I have my blocker. So I think it was the right play to take the Force of Will here. Now there is a question of whether or not I Brainstorm at their end of turn, given the opportunity. Just to make sure I give myself maximum amount of sculpting for the next turn, where I might need to cast multiple spells. Okay, so we have a Green Sun Zenith for 1. So that's going to probably be the guy that makes their spells uncounterable. I think we have to... I think we Brainstorm now and see if there is a Source to Plowshares as well, because that would change the dynamic of what we're doing. So there's this Aluren we definitely don't want. And then this Misty Rainforest we can use next time to shuffle it away. I think we will allow this Green Sun's End to resolve. Because even if they play the Cradle, they can't kill me this turn because their guys are summoning sick. Yep, so there's the Allosaurus Shepherd. Green spells you control can't be counted. So we need a black source to cast this. So we're going to get Bayou, go black, blue, cast this Baleful Strix out. We can't play this until the turn we win because otherwise they will play all their guys for free and we'll lose the game. So we have the Source to Plowshares. Excellent. We'll Source to Plowshares this guy now. Oh, you surely have Wildwood Symbiote. That was a misstep from me. That was a bit awkward. Got a bit ahead of myself there. Once Upon a Time. So this can likely find a Cradle. So they haven't found one yet. The fact they're taking their time means they probably don't have a Cradle because you would just snap that off immediately. Nope, there it is. Okay, so they do have a Cradle. So they play this, and these guys will be 5/5s. So I messed up with my Source to Plowshares there. This is a natural order turn. Glimpse of Nature. Okay. So they're going to be drawing a lot of cards this turn. So we're just going to yield until the attack step since we don't have anything we can do here. I think we've lost this game. Okay, we're getting some more information. So on the Reclaimer build, which is important information for us. So they should be able to keep digging until they hit natural order here because they've got 6 cards in hand. And they have a lot of mana because they've got all these elves and the Heritage Druid. They need to keep back enough guys without summoning sickness. So these 3 should be enough if they can just natural order now. So there's the natural order. Let's just make sure we see the Crater Hoof just in case they've got them in hand. Because that happened to me when I was playing elves the other day. They're just going to keep going here. Are they some sort of weird build that's trying to storm combo me or something? Because if they have Crater Hoof, they just get it there and win, unless they're just showboating. Now, the more of their deck they want to show me while their clock ticks down, the better it is for me. I get to work out what I'm playing against a bit better if there's anything unusual here. It could just mean they have both Crater Hoofs in hand, so they have to get enough guys that they can hard cast the Crater Hoof from hand. Which should be reasonably doable from here. So they have the Nettle Sentinel. They need another Nettle Sentinel to basically kind of not go infinite, but just be able to generate lots of mana on every single creature they play. That's ideally what I think they're looking for. If they're going for the make lots of mana line. Alright, so this should be a Nettle Sentinel then. Nope, it's another Wildwood Symbiote. Seems odd to me. Because what are they drawing for? They could just tutor for it there instead. Are they just trying to make sure that all of their creatures are lethal in the face of my open mana? Okay, so this only pumps elves. I guess we block one of these symbiotes. Interesting. Feels like they should have been able to win the game that turn. A Baleful Strix. So we're on the same play as last time. We're going to try and play this and draw into Asarak or... Oh wait, we need to keep the green mana actually for that, don't we? So we need 3 green if we draw the Living Wish. Which means this is definitely going to be the blue because this only makes blue. Okay, so this only makes blue. So we need to make black. So if we make with this with black, this can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We also can cast hard cast Force of Will, but not that we have targets for it. Sure, so I think this is the play. Can we draw the Lich? We cannot draw the Lich. So our opponent, they didn't win last turn, so they should be able to win this turn. They just make all their elves massive. Oh, they just had a Crater Hoof from hand this turn. Sure. Can't be countered. Concede the game. Felt like they definitely had to win the previous turn if they wanted it. So we have these Plague Engineers. I think it's better to have 3 copies of them so I can curve turn 2 into turn 3. So I'm going to leave this in the sideboard. Other than that, I don't think there's a great amount we really want here. We've got our removal suite. We've got the endurances. Fine if they're just sort of trying to get us with little guys, but I don't think that's really what we're looking at here. I honestly think we just run it back as is. I don't know if we want any more of these. I I think we just have to keep it as is. None of this is going to really help us out in this matchup, I don't think. There's an option for bringing the Force of Negations just so we can stop the Blitz of Nature, but they have the guy that makes stuff uncounterable, which makes these a little bit of a liability compared to some of our other options. And this only hits Glimpse and Natural Order. So I think it's a case of, are these worse than any of these? So this will dig us into removal, in theory. Maybe the Endurance can go. Maybe we can swap an Endurance for a Force of Negation, just so we've got a little bit more protection against it. But I don't think... I guess, is the Uro too slow? The Uros are sort of removal their things and then win with the Uro in time. So maybe we take out an Uro because we can always Living Wish for it and play this. I'm not a fan of this, but they seem quite heavy on the Glimpse strategy, and I don't think they played optimally in the previous game because it definitely felt like they could have played the Creative that turn. So I think having the Force of Wills might come in handy. Okay, so we have 2 removal spells. A Force of Will we can't cast yet, but we can certainly keep this. So we might be able to turn 3 combo. We are a combo deck, we just don't seem to be drawing our combo. So we would like something that lets us cast white and green spells. So that means Savannah. Because if somehow we lose our Birds of Paradise, we would still like to be able to cast Source of Plowshares, and this can get all our blue sources. Quirion Ranger, sure. Not the scariest of elves. Okay, so we've drawn the Force of Will. We have the ability to cast 2 Source of Plowshares this turn. I think we just sit back on this and wait a little bit longer. Well, we don't really have any other options, so we just have to sort of pass a turn and react to what our opponent does. Birchlaw Rangers. So the Birchlaw Rangers will allow them to tap this for mana this turn. Now, do I want them to do that so I can use my Source of Plowshares? I don't really want to Source of Plowshares their Quirion Ranger. I'd rather save it for the bigger targets, so the Mana Producers or the Allosaurus Shepherd. So we have a lot of insulation against what they're doing here. Hopefully we can actually combo one time, would be nice. Since, as you may have guessed, watching my channel, I am very much a combo player at heart. Elvish Reclaimant. Now this is a card that is worth... this card is worth Source of Plowshares in, because this allows them to go and fetch more Gaia's Cradles. So we need to keep this up for Allosaurus Shepherd to make sure we can counter the Natural Order if that's the thing that happens. So I would say we are behind in this game. So they want to untap their Birchlaw Rangers. So again, the thing that loses us this game immediately is the Natural Order, which I don't think we have to worry. So they're going to Green Suns for 1, which is going to go get the Shepherd, which we can then Source of Plowshares. Okay, it's the Wirewood Symbiote. Sure. So returning that elf to untap this guy. They're going to tap for 1. Yeah, go on, get the... Oh, come on. It's cowardice. So I have options of whether or not I want to use this to cast the Source of Plowshares. I don't think I do. So because I have to Source of Plowshares this before I can Source of Plowshares anything else, I think that's what we want to do here. Okay, so we have the Uro. So I think we'll crack this. We need a blue source and we probably want a black source. So I think we get the Underground Sea here. So we get blue, green, white, play this Uro. So this is just to try and dig into our deck a little bit better. Underground Sea, sure, that accelerates us out. So if we draw the Lich next turn, we can win the game. We have a Force of Will backup. We have to Force of Will the next Green Sun Zenith, I think. Glimpse of Nature. I think we have to hit, because if we don't, we're going to be behind, because they can draw lots and lots of cards. They just have so many cards in their hand, though. So again, that could be a bait spell, but they can't kill me on this turn, so at least it gives me an option. Now, they might choose to remove my Birds of Paradise here, but I think that would be a weird play unless their hand is really stacked, because they're going to need these guys for the resources to go off. Yep, so they're creating a token. Okay, so we have a Birds of Paradise again. So again, we have the ability to win the game if our opponent doesn't kill us. We just need to draw the Lich. Alternatively, we can draw the Living Wish. So there's definitely an option for me not playing out the Birds of Paradise here, so I can hold up 3 mana, as well as have 2 cards in hand to represent Force of Negation and Force of Will. But I think having this mana could be a difference between winning and losing the game next turn if they can't kill me. Considering their last play was just playing Grist rather than more guys, I think their hand is a little bit, not slow, but it's not going to be killing me in the immediate future. They only have the Birchall Rangers, which is a much weaker mana engine than the other elf, the Heritage Druid. Okay, so now they're getting the bits in. You just take it. Sure, they're just going to keep making insects. So they're going to go a bit wide here. So this also means if I draw Living Wish, I can get the Plague Engineer as well. Which is another reason why it's worth playing out. I think we have to play out this now. So in case we hit removal spells. We did hit removal spells. So the Brainstorm is something I'm interested in here. Currently we have 4, so the Leyline Binding costs 2. So if we Brainstorm into a land, we can then cast the Leyline Binding, which I think is probably where we want to be. So let's take the Brainstorm and the Leyline Binding. Now this is greedy, but I don't think we win the game if we don't advance our position here. So we found the land, found this Aluren and this Blades of Paradise that we don't want. So we'll play this out. So we can go and get the Triome here, which means that the Birds of Paradise can tap on its own to cast Leyline Binding, if I've got that right, because I will have Swamp, Island, Forest, Plains, Mountain. So that will reduce the cost of it by 5. And it also means I won't be drawing the Triome at any point. So the question is, when do I play this Leyline Binding? So I can play it now and hit the Birchall Rangers, or I can see what transpires first, because they have a lot of mana with the Cradle anyway, so I'm not sure that hitting their mana producer makes any difference this turn. I think I'm going to lose this game. I think I'm quite far behind here. Again, I do have draws that just immediately win me the game, but every single one of my opponent's draw steps feels like it could just kill me out of nowhere, precisely because it could. I am representing Force of Will here, so they have to play around that. If they just want to attack with their guys, that's fine by me. I don't think we block here. It's not a particularly high amount of damage. You can just take it. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So next turn I will have to block or use my Leyline Binding. Morph. So this is the Birchall Rangers. Interesting. They just want it as a 2-2. So I think they're on the beatdown plan, so I maybe want to keep the Leyline Binding. Mystic Sanctuary. So if I play this and put this on top, what does that mean for me? So this taps for blue. So this doesn't actually tap for green. I thought it tapped for green. So we can play this Uro. So if we play this for green, this for green, this for blue, and this for blue. So we can get the Uro in play, which is going to be good against a lot of their little guys, and it's going to buffer our life total. And hopefully... Okay, we have a Mystic Sanctuary. How in the market for Mystic Sanctuary am I? We have a Force of Negation here that we can't... We can cast, actually, off the Birds of Paradise. So I think we just put the Brainstorm in our hand, because that's the thing that's on top of our library, because that's the thing that's most likely to win us the game. Because I don't think we can keep trying to fade our opponent's turns here. And I don't think one Swords to Plowshares is going to make a difference. So I think we put the Brainstorm on top. So we hold up the Force of Negation and the Leyline Binding this turn. Because the Brainstorm lets us see 3 cards to try and win the game instead of just the 1 off of our draw. So this can drain me for how much life? 1, 2. So this lets them drain me for 2, potentially 3 if I kill one of their creatures. We can also Leyline Binding the Grist. This is a problem. I don't know how we're supposed to beat this card. Now, if they do something foolish and like pass through me Leyline Binding them, maybe we can win the game here. But otherwise, I think we're dead. Because the first thing they're going to do here is activate this guy. You may sacrifice a creature. Let's see what happens with the Leyline Binding. Now, how many creatures do they have here? So if we hit the Allosaurus Shepherd, a good player will just pump it anyway. So if we hit one of the elves, how many elves are we going to have to get through? 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's 20 damage, and we're only going to have 1 blocker. So we're going to have to hit the Allosaurus Shepherd and hope our opponent makes a mistake. Our opponent looks like they are not making a mistake, which is sad for me. So my Uro is going to get killed here, I assume. And now I can only block one of these. I'm going to take 5, 10, 15, 22. So that is the game. We had a lot of turns where we could have drawn Living Wish or our Arc Lich to just win the game, but sometimes when you play a combo deck, you don't draw your pieces. You have a fail rate, and because this is not a fully dedicated control deck, I can't really stabilize the board, and Elves is quite a hard deck to stabilize against without things like the Plague Engineers. Alright, so that's the end of that round. We're going to go into another one. Alright, we're into the 4th round, I think, and this is my opening hand. We have a combo on turn 4. We have a little bit of disruption that can also turn into filtering, so I think we're going to keep this. So we have an option here of playing the Mystic Sanctuary tapped, because it's probably going to come into tap this game, come into play tap this game. That's where we want to be. It's not great. Also, if it gets wastelanded, it's the least important land in my deck. So if they want to spend their first turn wastelanding a card that doesn't do anything, that's fine by me. A mountain. Hopefully this isn't a prison deck, because that would be bad for me, because it's very hard for me to beat Bloodmoon. So we can't really afford to... Oh, I was going to say we can't really afford to Force of Will unless we have a blue card. So I think we're just in the market to try and secure our land drops. So we're going to play this Ponder. Source to Plowshares is nice to have. So is the Leyline Binding. I think we want Flooded Strand first, though. We take the Leyline Binding, then the Swords, then the Flooded Strand. So we have a Swords next turn if we need it. If we don't want it, we can shuffle away. Okay, so it's not what I thought it was, necessarily. Unlicensed Hearse. This card only interacts with our Uro, so we don't care about this. Do we want to draw our Swords to Plowshares or our Leyline Binding? I think we don't want to draw them. I think we'd rather just play... we get another Trop here, is that right? And this one can get a Scrubland. Sure. So if we play this out, play this and this to play Living Wish. I'm going to Pokey Sideboard up here. Get the Arc Lich. And we want to hold this up in case we need to brainstorm things away. Sure, you can exile cards from my graveyard as much as you like. So next time we get Aluren and we do this until our opponent dies. Okay, so they have 1 black mana this turn. So hitting a Thoughtseize is fine. Maddening Hex. That is non-creature spell. So I can take 6 damage from casting my Aluren and 6 damage from casting a Force of Will on anything they have at instant speed. So that's 12 damage. This is a creature, so this is fine. We allow this to resolve. Okay, so this is some sort of black-red mid-range build, I guess. So play this out. Okay, this doesn't really matter what land we get. We haven't shown them black mana yet, so if we can avoid showing them black mana, that'd be nice. But do we want to show them white mana? I think it's probably better to show them the black, because the white is something we're hinging on more. So green, green, blue, blue. Sure, I'll take my damage. I will cast with Aluren. Doesn't matter. Cast this again. This is not the quickest of loops to go for Goblin Lair. Cast with Aluren. We're going to make me click through it all. Dark Pool is the one that drains them, isn't it? Not the quickest combo on the old Magic Online, this one. Kind of hoping my opponent would scoop at this point. Okay, so we're on to the last rep of this, because they're making us play the whole thing out. So here we go. Let's put the last one on that's going to drain them out for lethal. Okay, so there we go. Which is why I only have 13 minutes left on the clock, so I only play out for however many minutes. So what does my opponent's deck have? Black spells and red spells. That's what I know. So I have to assume some sort of hand disruption. The Maddening Hex made me think they're less likely to play any sort of prison-y things. It just felt like they were more just playing relatively fair cards by the looks of it. So I don't really know what I'm supposed to board here. Like my main, like because I'm a wish board, I've got like a lot of action. I think I have to board the Force of Vigor just in case. I'm not sure how good the Baleful Strix is necessarily going to be in that situation. The Shadow Prophecy is going to be bad if I'm underneath a Blood Moon potentially. So I think we can board out a Baleful Strix at least. I didn't get the impression the Endurance was going to be required. They didn't look like they were reanimating anything. So I think the one card we did see from them was the Unlicensed Hearse, which means the Uro is probably less useful here. So we could probably trim an Uro so we at least have one to shoot for. Another Force of Negation in case they're a Blood Moon deck. And the question is, do I want the Collector Roof? I think it's better to tutor with. Do I want the last Force of Negation? I would have to take out something like a Shadow Prophecy, which I think is probably okay. We'll try it like this. We've always got game 3, but we have to be careful because it might make us play the whole thing out again. This is my opening hand. It has turn 4 combo, it has protection, and it has filtering. I will keep this. Okay, our opponent just played a Mountain Go. We'll play this out. We'll sacrifice this. We'll get a Tropical Island. So I think that's going to be the market we're in for lands. And we will ponder this turn and see if we can get some more blue cards and lands. Well, it's kind of like blue cards and lands, isn't it? I think we have... I think if we put this into our hand, then... Yes, I think if we put Force of Will, Birds of Paradise, Brainstorm, draw the Brainstorm. So we have double Force of Will up. Because we have to protect against any hand disruption as well, I think, this game. We can play this out. Play out the Birds of Paradise here. We know the next card on top of our library is Force of Will, so we'll see what our opponent makes us do. But this gives us 3 mana here. So we're pretty close to going off. We have double Force of Will protection. This could just be another Maddening Hex, which isn't really an issue for me. Damping Sphere. If a land is tapped for 2 or more mana, each spell casts 1 more without paying their mana cost. This is an additional cost, so I think we have to Force of Will this. A Red Elemental Blast. Sure. Okay. They can't have another Red Elemental Blast, so I think we're going to counter the Damping Sphere. So now we know the top card of our library is a Force of Will that we don't want to draw. So I think we will shuffle our library at end of turn. What do we want here? A black source is good, and a white source we don't have. So I think if we get the Scrubland here, it will mean our Leyline Bindings are very cheap. In case we need to remove a sphere, we can still do that. So we've got 2 green here. In this case, we drew the Triome. So I think we play Triome out. Tap this for green. That's white. Cast a Living Wish. Then we get the Arclich. And then we hope our opponent was all in on that particular artifact that I managed to counter. If they have another one, then that's less good for us, but we can slow cast the Lich and keep scrying if they somehow remove. Okay, so this doesn't impact what we're doing. So what am I worried about for 1 red mana? For 1 red mana, they can kill my Birds of Paradise, but if they do that, they'll do that before I go to my turn. If I can go to my main phase with the Birds of Paradise, I think we win, but we just have to go through the operations. Green, green, white, blue. Cast this. They're going to make me go through the motions. They've conceded rather than letting me go through the motions. Okay, so we are 2 and 2. So we're going to the final round, trying to get our money back, really. I think the mana base for this deck has some issues. I think this is a greedy deck, but we'll go into the final round and see how we do. Hopefully they don't have Blood Moons. Okay, so this is our opening hand for the final round. As you can see, it doesn't really have the things I need. I need more mana sources than this for sure, so we're going to mulligan. So this opening hand has got 2 mana sources and a Brainstorm and the ability to make some relatively cheap Leyline Bindings and possibly into an Uro. So I think we keep this. I think we have to put back one of the Leyline Bindings. Sure. We're on the play here as well, by the way. Okay, so this makes the Uro a lot worse. So if we play this out into a Wasteland, that's really bad for us. So we can play this out, and if we have to crack it to Brainstorm, that's fine, but then we can play this next turn, Brainstorm and fetch away, which is the plan we would like to enact. So this is the Thoughtseize. So because we have 2 Brainstorms, I think we just let this hit us. The Uro doesn't do very much here. The Leyline Binding is the one thing we might want to preserve, but they haven't given us any due course. They're not playing out creatures just yet, so I think we're okay. I'll probably take the Leyline Binding here, which obviously gives me 2 Brainstorms to fix my hand with. Sure, so there's the Leyline Binding gone like we predicted. So we hit another land here. Let's play this. So if we brainstorm now, we can hit a Birds of Paradise. How important is the Birds of Paradise in terms of where I look to be? I won't really know until I resolve my brainstorm how important that's going to be. So I think we will brainstorm. Okay, so we have an Aluren and we have these Force of Wills. Am I scared of what they're going to play next turn? Potentially. We don't really want this Uro, so we'll get rid of this Uro. And then we have the choice of whether we want to tuck a Force of Will or keep the brainstorm. So I think we're going to tuck a Force of Will, and then we can crack or take a Force of Will depending on how we feel. We could also get a little bit greedy and try and crack and brainstorm, depending on what they play. That'll be the better play if they're going to play some hand disruption. So another Thoughtseize. Sure. So I think we will crack this now. So we need to get something that casts, that will give us white mana, I believe. So I think we need the Tundra here. So I think we will tap this for blue and we will cast this Brainstorm. So we can put back these two on top of our library. I guess we don't really want the Force of Will because we're not going to be able to cast it. So put the Force of Will back first and then the Aluren. So this is going to mean our opponent's going to know that we don't have anything going on. Hopefully our opponent is in a similar fashion without much going on. So I'm trying to think of what decks this could be. And for some reason I'm just thinking about the Iggy Pop deck that Brian Cook played the other day, which looked quite fun. So maybe people are getting on board with that. But it's very rare to see decks that aren't mono black playing main deck Leyline. So I can assume they probably have Helm of Obedience somewhere in their deck. That's usually a fair guess when someone has a Leyline. Okay, so they're on a one lander. So I think we play out the Tropical Island. We want to keep our fetch lands for brainstorms and so on and so forth. And we're going to cycle the Triome when the time comes. So we have a Force of Will that we're not particularly interested in. We have this Leyline Binding. So we're kind of just looking for liches and a lich or a Living Wish. So if they don't have too much movement this turn, next turn we can play out the Force of Will. We can have the hardcast Force of Will. So we have the Leyline Binding. So if they go into a Helm here, so if they tap this Helm, I can Leyline Binding in response to the activation and hit the thing. So we've got blue, black, white. So red, green is what we want. So we can get, no, sorry, we've got green, white, blue. So we need black, red. So we can't get black, red, so we just get black here. We probably wait for them to activate in case they hit a creature and burn the Helm of Obedience altogether. So let's resolve. And then they activate and target me, and then I remove the Leyline in response. White. Hopefully this will hit a creature. No, it didn't. Okay, so they can get to spin again later. But I get to hold up Force of Will. Obviously, I can draw things that let me just automatically win the game. That's a pretty good one, but if I cast this, I can't hold up my Force of Will. So I think we're just best off playing the safe route and holding up the Force of Will. They've only got one shot with the City of Traitors left. So they can use this, and then if they play their Swamp, so they can cast their Leyline or their Doughty Voidwalker, they're going to lose their City of Traitors, which makes it more difficult for them to cast Leylines. Chromox is fine. So that's Sheldred. A Doughty Voidwalker. Okay, so we have to sacrifice this and get... So we can get the Mystic Sanctuary that lets us draw a bunch more cards next turn, which might be good. If we get the Mystic Sanctuary, it will come in untapped. Put the Shadow Prophecy on top, then I get to look at the top 4 cards of my library next turn and get 2 of them. That seems good to me. So our opponent can use Helm of Obedience to mill this again if they want to. Which I think would probably be a good play there, but they did not do that. So we have the option of casting the Brainstorm first, but I think we just need the raw cards here. So we can use... If we use these 3 mana, it doesn't leave us up with Leyline Binding. So I think we have to use this, and then we have to use black. So okay, so what does this get us? We would like the Force of Will, and we would like the Living Wish. So we can cast Living Wish this turn. And we go and get the Lich. So we have to fade 1 turn here. Now there is the possibility that they can cast another Doughty Voidwalker for free when I play the Aluren and mill me, but I won't draw my deck necessarily because I can put the triggers on in a way that I go through it. It's going to be a lot of work to do online, but we can get around it. Hopefully I'll just concede once I play the Arch-Lich. Khan the Great Creator. What does this find them? A Pithing Needle doesn't do anything. I think we probably should just counterspell this because we don't know what they're getting. That's probably safest. They've got 2 cards in hand, so they can't have the ability to combo this turn. I think it's just safe to deal with the thing. Well, I could swamp and then get me. This with green, green, black, blue. And here we go again. Okay, so they know the combo, so they've conceded. That was very nice of my opponent, thank you. So now we're going... well, they're playing mono blacks. They're clearly a scholar and a fine human being. So sideboarding, mono black decks. They're trying to resolve Helm of Obedience. So Force of Negation stops Helm of Obedience. Force of Vigor stops Helm of Obedience. Collector Roof, I think that's better off as a Living Wish target still. Same with Night of Autumn, because then I can work out if I'm trying to win the game then or not. So the Swords to Plowshares will kill the little guy that I need to kill. I suspect they could be playing Chalices, which will mean some of these cards are less... I don't necessarily want all of these cards. But I don't really want to trim all of my breathing. So I think we can just take out the Uros. I've also noted, it took me a while, but I think the Endurance is also there because it, if you have to do more than the amount of cards in your library with the Arch-Lich, it's just easier to Endurance all your cards in and then go again, which is interesting. I don't think the Endurance is where I want to be here though, so I think we can cut that. So we've got these 2 Force of Vigors and 2 Force of Negations. I think we've got enough green cards and enough blue cards for them both. I think we're just going to give this a go. Okay, so my opening hand has a lot of lands. It has the Brainstorm to fix my hand. It has half of our combo, but also has defense in the form of Force of Negation if they've just got a really fast turn 1 without disruption. So I think this is okay, but I'm relying on the Brainstorm to do a lot of work here, which definitely could make me come undone. So I'm going to go with a Reluctant Keep here. Dark Ritual, sure. Rotting Regisaur. Yeah, I can't counter this with Force of Negation. But puts me on a 3-turn clock. I think we're in the market for this into Brainstorm next turn, hoping to find a Swords to Plowshares. If we have to Brainstorm in response to something, we can. So our opponent's burned quite a lot of cards to make this happen. I don't think we want to Brainstorm here. Although it makes Ley Unbinding an answer, but I don't think that's... Sure, so if we play out this, crack this first, Tropical Island, and we Brainstorm now because we have the fetch land. Okay, so none of these are what we require. There's a lot of lands. I don't think we're in the mood for the Mystic Sanctuary or the Scrubland though, so we put those 2 back. So I think we sacrifice this, and we get a Tundra. Yes, so our Polluted Delve can get a Scrubland if something happens to this, so we can still cast a Plough next turn if we need be. So now we ponder away. Leyline Binding, Force of Negation. Okay, so I think if we put them on top this way, then we have maximum protection with Force of Wills, and then we have the Leyline Binding for the following turn, which will be reduced by... I can get a Black Source next turn, so I can make it cost 2 mana. So we're going to try and let this run them out of cards, and then we're going to Leyline Bind them. So we're going to take a hit here. Okay, so these are all swamps, which help. We do have a Leyline Binding on top of our library. This is also half of their combo, so I think it just makes sense to keep things like this. So this is beginning of upkeep, so it doesn't really matter when I Leyline Bind it, because they're not going to discard another card. So we play this out. So these are all swamps as well now. So I can Leyline Bind this turn, and then see if I need the Leyline Binding next turn. This costs white, blue, or white, green even. Okay, so our opponent's hellbent with 3 lands in play. And I have a Leyline Binding on top of my library in case they have a threat. So I think I might draw the Leyline Binding just as insurance. Yeah, so I think we draw that as insurance. And then we can cast Force of Negation, Force of Vigor. So I think we're okay. We don't know what the top card of our library is now, so we don't have to fetch. We only have 3 fetches available, or 2 fetches available to us in this game. Helm of Obedience. This is fine, because we have a lot of answers here. So I think we, again, just hold back. Because whilst they're drawing 1 card a turn, so we're just trying to draw into our combo now. The power of blue cards compel me. Is this Birds of Paradise a useful card to have in my hand right now? I think we're better off just having all of our ability to hard cast spells here. So our opponent can spin the wheel and see if they hit something with this. But I think that's a low value play. So I'm in a considerably favourable position here. A Ponder. So this is one we're going to cast. I think we cast it with... What are we looking for? A Living Wish. That's one of the ones we're looking for. Let's put this on top, this on top, this on top. We will not like to shuffle our luck. So the issue is, if we cast this, we can't cast Force of Negation. We can cast Aluren and Tundra and Leyline Binding. So I think we are fine here to go and get a Tropical Island. So we get a Tropical Island and we use the Swamp. Wait, hold on. We don't have red mana here, do we? So Leyline Binding costs 2 at the moment. So we only have access to Force of Vigor if we cast a Living Wish right now. I think that will be enough. We get our combo piece. And we pass the turn with Force of Vigor up. They can't get rid of both of our Allurens, but they can get rid of our Arc Glitch, which is annoying, but... Dark Ritual. Sure. Maybe that was a tester spell. Was this Peer Through Depths? Or are they just spinning the wheel on Helm of Obedience? This is a good play. How much does this cost? I think I can lose the game here if they find a creature. If they found the Lich. I can't remember what all the dungeons do, but I think it means they get to scry or they make me discard a card of my choice. I think that's the best options they have. I think one of what does the other one do? One of them gains 1 life at its first stage. So that was a very fortuitous one for me, because if they found... To be fair, there's not many creatures they can find with actual power in my deck. So they could find the Baleful Strix, which doesn't deal with me. Each player loses 1 life. Sure, so I don't have fetch lands anymore. That's fine, I have green already. I must discard one of my cards. I don't want to play into Surgical Extraction, so we'll discard this. I don't think my opponent can have anything here. I could be mistaken. So the Force of Vigor is only instant speed, is only free to cast on their turn. Okay, so we can cast this with green, blue, black. So then we cast this with instant speed. So, okay, so they've conceded. Right, so that was a 3-2. Let's have a look at the deck. So my immediate thought on this deck is, oh boy, is it greedy. Yes, we got the 3-2, but we don't have a single basic to fetch in this deck, which feels incredibly greedy to me. Not necessarily that having basics to fetch would really help me in the situations where you get Blood Moon, but what would help would be 4 Force of Vigor. I think the Night of Autumn is just too cute here. If this was something like a... What's the one? The 3-mana Reclamation Sage. If this was a Reclamation Sage, you could at least cast Living Wish off of your Birds of Paradise and then cast this. Whereas under Blood Moon, you just don't have that out. So I don't think this is what you want in your sideboard. Obviously, it's a good card, but I don't think it's what you want. As for the main deck, the Shadow Prophecies were all right. Would they be better as other blue spells to draw cards with? I don't know. Like, because of this, we're playing a Come Into Play tap land. Now, we could get rid of the Come Into Play tap land, get rid of the bindings and the Shadow Prophecies and run something like Prismatic Ending, which obviously doesn't have the flash that this has, but it would shore up our mana base a little bit. Alternatively, you could cut white altogether, and instead of running Swords to Plowshares and Leyline Bindings, you could run things like Abrupt Decay, Assassin's Trophy, that sort of thing, which is obviously not as good as these, because these are clean answers. You know, Fatal Push is what you could have if you wanted a 1-mana answer to creatures, but obviously these can hit any mana cost things and they can kill a Marit Lage, whereas Fatal Push can't. So I don't know. I've seen a lot of 4-color decks lately, and they've been able to play basics. Obviously, we're trying to cast blue-green. We're trying to cast a green-green spell as well as a black-blue spell on turn 2. So it's going to be a little bit more difficult for us. But I think you could probably get rid of the Leyline Binding and the Shadow Prophecy, and then shore up the mana base a little bit, just to give us some more options, perhaps. And we could also, like, sometimes I just lost games waiting for the combo. So I had the chance to draw the combo and win the game, but it just never came. So maybe we need a 4th Living Wish So if one of these was a Living Wish, 3 different removal spells, probably Prismatic Ending is where I would be leaning towards, or going up to 4 Swords to Plowshare, having 2 Prismatic Endings, or maybe having 3 Prismatic Endings, 4 Swords, this into a Living Wish. So this into a Swords to Plowshares, this into a Living Wish, we've got 4. And then we could have 3 Prismatic Endings and turn this into a better draw spell. Like even, I think what would be a better draw spell here? Something like we have Uros, which is a good draw engine. So there's this is good because it doesn't get Pyroblasted, which is something that's worth noting. But I think there's got to be a better option of drawing. Like even something like a Sylvan Library here would be quite useful, because then it gives you 5 good turn 2 plays if you don't have your Birds of Paradise, and you can find various things with it, and you can protect your combo from hand disruption a little bit, you know, floating stuff on top of your library. So maybe this would be better as a Sylvan Library. I'm not sure. I'll have to have a rethink on this. Obviously, this is the first time I've played Aluren, so I'm just coming at it from a relatively fresh perspective. So, you know, there's probably some little things I've missed somewhere. The Mystic Sanctuary was fine. Again, this could also be a Narset as one of our draw engines. The Narset will find the Aluren, but it won't find the Arclich, but it will find Living Wish, it will find our removal, it will find our cantrips and counter spells. So maybe that's something that's good. If you're in blue-white, you could run Teferi so that when you go off, your opponent can't interfere with you. So there's definitely options of some maybe slightly more streamlined and less greedy. Like obviously, if you go greedy and you get lucky with your matchups and things and your draws, then yeah, greedy is good. But I think you're going to lose a number of games because of your mana base and the greed. Now, if you want to reduce that percentage of games you lose, I don't necessarily think the percentage you're going to lose on having slightly less powerful effects is going to be detrimental to you. I think the percentage of not losing to your own deck is going to be a better increase over that. I think I've talked about the main deck enough. Let's have a little look at the sideboard. I think it was a fine, like I changed the wish targets slightly from the list I had. I wish I'd have changed this to Reclamation Sage, like I said, or just more Force of Vigor, I think is fine. The Caracas, like I understand why it's in there, but I think if you're in a situation where you're living wishing for a land or creature and you're just getting the Caracas, you're probably quite far behind there, and I'm not sure that a Caracas is necessarily going to be enough, because yes, you can use this to bounce a Marit Lage token, which is nice, but that only stops them for 1 turn because this is going to get wastelanded, because their deck has access to lots of wastelands. So maybe there are better options you have here. Like this can bounce a Grizzlebrand, but I think if they have a Grizzlebrand and you're getting Caracas, you've already lost the game. I think maybe this could be, what would be more useful than this? I guess sometimes you might just want to get a land from your sideboard, so maybe just having a land of some description that taps some mana is a good idea, because you can kind of use this as a really bad draw a land card effect. But if you need that to win the game, then that's what you need. So maybe a different land, perhaps, or maybe this is the best land. I can't be sure. If you're Living Wishing, you're probably going to have your combo set up anyway, so you're not going to need to Living Wish for like something that draws you cards, I don't think. An Otawara, maybe, could be a useful one in here, just so you can bounce things without using the stack in terms of counter spells. A reliable source. I'm not sure. Like, I feel there's definitely some tweakage here, but I'd have to think about it to make it work. I think going up endurances rather than having the surgical extractions was a good idea. I'm glad I made that change. And I think the Carpet of Flowers is incredibly powerful, and I won a game because of it against the Death Shadow deck that really stripped my mana back, but eventually I had a Carpet of Flowers and it didn't matter. They spent all these resources trying to constrict my mana, but then we just sort of pulled ahead with this. And they pretty much just conceded on the spot. So I think this deck's got some promise, but there is a significant problem in terms of playing online, which is this card takes a long time to resolve an Aluren kill with. I think it took me 8 minutes, 8 minutes or something like that to resolve a kill. Now, if you're in a grindy game, your opponent could just let you time out, perhaps, so you might lose games that you would otherwise win. But if you want to play this in paper, I think this is a fine deck. I would make some slight tweaks to it for sure. I think cards like Shadow Prophecy do have a lot of potential. Not necessarily sure if this is the deck that you ideally want it for, but I'm definitely going to keep my eye on Shadow Prophecy cropping up here and there. Like a non-pyroblastable card advantage engine feels like something that might well be making a bigger part of the form. I remember when we used to have the 3 mana, it was like a sunbursty spell, so it was 2 and a black, Painful Truce I think it was called, where it was 2 and a black, you draw a card for each different colour of mana spent on this spell and you lose 1 life. So basically it was 3 different coloured mana, draw 3 cards. Now this doesn't draw as many cards, but it lets you see a lot deeper, so you can look at 5 cards and you can do it instant speed. So I think this might be a powerful card to look to in the future perhaps. Anyway, I think that's about it. I had a reasonable amount of fun playing this deck. I don't think I had necessarily the most complicated of lines to run with this deck today, which is probably alright considering it's nearly 2 o'clock in the morning here. So I think I did alright, all things taken into account there. So I hope you enjoy watching this league. And can I please just plug again that I would like you to subscribe to my channel. The more subscribers I get, the better it is, and it makes it more reliable. I can keep making this content for you all that I hope you're enjoying. Alright, if you've got any other comments, just leave them below and I can have a look and see if there's any advice on how I played or things you'd like me to change with the way I record my videos as well. Alright, thank you very much for watching and goodbye.